Hello, everybody out there. Welcome to IR Theory 101. This is an educational series designed to introduce you to the foundational theories of international relations, IR. Each episode will break down complex ideas into clear, concise explanations. At least that is the ambition. From realism to liberalism to constructivism, Marxism to post-colonialism and beyond. This series is your starting point for mastering IR theory. Today, we will introduce realism. Realism is one of the most influential theories in international relations. It focuses on power, survival, and the role of states in an anarchic world. It assumes that global politics is competitive and conflict-prone, shaped by the pursuit of security, power, and influence. Realism starts from a pessimistic view of human nature and doubts that reason can overcome war and conflict. That is the fundamental philosophical underpinning. Realism sees the world as one of scarce resources, zero-sum logic, and relative gains. States operate in an environment where vital resources, such as security, technology, and economic advantages, are limited, creating constant pressure to secure them. The zero-sum logic basically says that gains for one state often mean losses for another. Power and security are viewed as finite. So if one state becomes stronger, others feel weaker. States therefore do not just care about absolute improvements, but how their gains compare to rivals. Even if cooperation brings benefit, states worry about falling behind others. Positional goods are advantages that matter because of their position relative to others, like military superiority, technological leadership, or status. States compete for these goods because they signal prestige and influence in the international hierarchy. Realist scholars further argue that political life is organized around groups, not individuals. This perspective contrasts with liberal individualism and Marxist class analysis. To quote Robert Gilpin, the building blocks and ultimate units of social and political life are not the individuals of liberal thought nor the classes of Marxism. Although in certain circumstances, class may in fact be the basis of group solidarity, of course. Realism holds that the foundation of political life is conflict groups. This is another way of saying that in a world of scarce resources and conflict over the distribution of those resources, human beings confront one another ultimately as members of groups and not as isolated individuals. Homo sapiens is a tribal species, and loyalty to the tribe for most of us ranks above all loyalties other than that of the family. In the modern world, we have given the name nation-state to these competing tribes and the name nationalism to this form of loyalty. Realism rests on three core assumptions: statism, survival, and self-help. These three S's of realism, neatly outlined in IR textbooks across the world, most often the good old The Globalization of World Politics by Bailey, Smith, and Owens. These three S's are a set of core concepts that form the foundation of the theory. They guide its analysis of international relations, particularly regarding the role of the state and the nature of the international system. Realists argue that the state is the primary actor in international relations. While organizations and individuals indeed matter, states hold sovereignty and control over resources. States are seen as unitary and rational actors for analytical purposes, meaning scholars treat them as single decision-making entities to simplify and model behavior, to simplify their analysis. This underscores the idea that global politics is fundamentally state-centric, and other actors, such as international organizations or transnational corporations or NGOs, play secondary roles. Think of the world as a chessboard. States are the main pieces moving around strategically. The top priority for any state is survival. Why? Because the international system is anarchic. There is no global authority to guarantee security. States must therefore pursue power to protect themselves. This is intimately connected to self-help. In an anarchic system, states cannot rely on others for their protection. Alliances do exist, but they are temporary and interest-based. Ultimately, each state depends on its own capabilities, military, economic, resources, population, and so on to survive. Now let's look at structural realism. According to this perspective, the international system consists of three core components. Anarchy, interacting units without functional differentiation, in other words, that is, states, and international distribution of power. Anarchy, which we already mentioned, simply means that there is no overarching authority above states. The international system lacks a central government, meaning states operate in a self-help environment where security is never guaranteed. Interacting units without functional differentiation, states. This basically means that all states perform similar core functions, maintaining security, governing populations, and pursuing survival. Unlike domestic systems where roles differ, states in the international system are functionally alike. They differ in their capabilities, but not in their core purpose. And then, international distribution of power. The structure of the system is defined by how power is distributed among states. This distribution, whether unipolar, bipolar, or multipolar, shapes patterns of behavior, alliances, and the likelihood of conflict. Realists define power in terms of capabilities. The economic, military, and other capabilities of nations, Walls put it, cannot be sectored or separately weighed. States are not placed in the top rank because they excel in one way or another. Their rank depends on how they score on all of the following items: size of population and territory, resource endowment, economic capability, military strength, political stability, and competence. That is basically how realists define power in terms of capabilities. And with this definition, we get a positional picture that describes a system in terms of the placement of units rather than in the terms of their internal qualities. And we thus get a material environment structured by power or capabilities that constrain state behavior. The international environment is thus material and structured by power or capabilities according to realists. This view emphasizes how the structure of the system shapes state behavior more than their internal characteristics. How the material or the physical environment of the world constrain or shape or affect state behavior. This naturally leads to the concept of polarity. The realist concept of polarity refers to the number of major powers in the system. Multipolarity basically means many powers. Bipolarity, two powers. And unipolarity, one dominant power. And each configuration influences stability and conflict differently. Let us start with multipolarity. Multipolarity is generally considered to be the most unstable by structural realists. With many great powers, alliance patterns shift frequently. There is increasing uncertainty as well as risk of miscalculation and war. Bipolarity, on the other side, is different. Structural realists like Kenneth Waltz argue that bipolarity is the most stable configuration. With only two major powers, uncertainty is reduced and balancing is straightforward, lowering the chances of systemic conflict. Unipolarity. Here, realists disagree. Some argue that unipolarity can be stable if the hegemon provides order, while others claim it breeds instability because other states will eventually seek to balance against the hegemon, leading to rivalry and conflict. According to realists, power is relative. Your strength matters compared to others. It's zero-sum. More for me means less for you. It's relational. Power is exercised over others to influence their behavior. So, actor A has power over B because actor A influences or controls actor B to do something it would otherwise not have done. So power is relative, power is zero-sum, power is relational. In many ways, realism offers a Darwinian perspective. The three S's and the systemic logic of realism creates what we can call a Darwinian environment for international politics. States operate like species in a competitive ecosystem, adapting strategies to survive in an anarchic system. Competition further encourages similarities in behavior and attributes. So in short, the structure rewards conformity to successful practices that leads to state survival. In other words, states learn and conform. Successful practices spread, dysfunctional behaviors disappear. The system rewards security seeking and punishes pacifism. A Darwinian environment for international politics. Another very relevant concept is the security dilemma. As states seek security, they accumulate power, making others feel insecure. This triggers an arms race and a vicious cycle of tension and conflict. As John Hertz put it, striving to attain security from attack, states are driven to acquire more and more power in order to escape the power of others. This in turn renders the others more insecure and compels them to prepare for the worst. Since none can ever feel entirely secure in such a world of competing units, power competition ensues, and the vicious circle of security and power accumulation is on. Balance of power. Yes, when survival is threatened, states form alliances to counter threats and maintain equilibrium or balance. The goal is to prevent any state or coalition from dominating the system. And then we have different forms of balancing. States can balance by building internal capabilities or internal balancing, or they can balance by forming alliances and coalitions, that is external balancing. Alternatively, they can bandwagon, that is align with a stronger power instead of opposing it. And that's that.